There we are. And hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome to our regulars, and welcome as well to first-timers who are joining us this evening or this morning, this afternoon for episode 19, which will be the Earning Our DTM in Pathways. And I am very happy to say that I will finally get to use that a little bit of a cliche phrase that says our first speaker needs no introduction. Actually, he does have an introduction, and he has given it to me so often that I have misplaced it. But I will have him speak first. And I'm referring to George Marshall. He is the District 57 Chief Pathways Guide. By now, I think every Toastmaster would know that District 57 was the first pilot district, the very first district in the world that started Pathways. So before we actually start the panel discussion, George has very graciously agreed to do a short presentation to explain the differences and similarities between the DTM in the traditional program and in Pathways. So this is not yet our panel discussion. This is just a prelude to the panel discussion where we'll be talking about the DTM. So George, let us welcome George, and then I promise by the time it's done, I will have found his introduction and I will do a fitting introduction for him. So for now, let's welcome George Marshall.
Thank you, Michelle. Hi, everyone. I'm tapped to give this section because I've been in Toastmasters for about 16 years, and I have in fact completed 4 DTMs, 3 from the traditional and 1 Pathways DTM. So obviously that makes me qualified to talk about the requirements for DTM. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to very briefly go over the requirements for a traditional DTM and then for a pathway DTM, and then I'm going to show you a point-by-point similarities and differences for what it takes to earn a DTM in each one of them. Since we have people right now, some trying to complete their traditional DTM leading up to June 30th, others looking further beyond, I think both of these are going to be relevant to you. Let's get going. Do you see my slide?
Yes, we do.
Thank you. So we're going to talk about DTM requirements for both your traditional and Pathways program as a lead-in to the panel discussion about DTM experiences. So first, let's talk about just a review. This should be a review for most of you, a review of the traditional programs chart to DTM. We have the communication track along the bottom. We have the leadership track along the top. If you earn a DTM in the traditional program, you will get all the communications awards, competent communicator, bronze, silver, and gold. Things like speechcraft and education are actually buried in the communications part of it. On the leadership track, which can be done in any order relative to the communications track, you get the competent leader, the advanced leader bronze, which is primarily the club officer and related duties, and the advanced leader silver, which is the big one. By completing both of the tracks, you are a DTM. Now let's look at the pathways chart to DTM. Start as a new member, you need to do 2 distinct paths. In addition, you'll need to be a club sponsor or do a speechcraft or do a youth leadership. Notice all of those are kind of like starting things, aren't they? You need to be a club mentor or a club coach. Both of those involve working with a club for an extended period of time, don't they? You need to be a club officer, 12 months now in this case, and of course you need to be a district officer. Upon completing all those, you can work on your DTM project, which for a while was called the capstone, but now simply is the DTM project. This is somewhat like an HPL. We can talk Well, actually, we just had a recent session on this program about what HPLs are, so let's not worry about that. And if you do all those, you will be a distinguished Toastmaster. Now, they sound a little similar, don't they? But let's just look at them point by point to see the differences and the similarities. So here's the essential differences. Traditional DTM on the left, pathway DTM on the right. In the traditional DTM and the communications track, you'll do about 45 speeches. It varies, and some of those will be educationals. In the pathways DTM, you'll do about 30 to 35 speeches. Again, it can vary. And some of those may be leadership projects in addition to speeches. You need to serve as a club officer for 6 months. That gets you your Advanced Leader Bronze Award. On the pathway side, you need to be a club officer for 12 months, not 6. You can do that with 2 different 6-month terms. They don't have to be contiguous, but you need 12 months worth of club officer. You need to be a district officer in the traditional program, and guess what? It's identical, a district officer in the Pathways program. In the traditional program, you need to earn a high performance leadership. That's done as part of the Advanced Leader Silver Award. On the Pathway DTM, you'll need to do a DTM project. You may, by the way, also do 1 or more HPLs as part of those paths. And that depends on which path and which projects you pick. You can do a Pathway DTM without an HPL, but you will do the DTM project, which is rather similar in some ways to an HPL. In the traditional program, your one requirement can be met by being a club sponsor, a coach, or a mentor. In Pathways, this section would be met by either a coach or a mentor. And now let's talk about the sponsor. And the last major section of a traditional DTM is the youth leadership, speechcraft, or one of the longer educationals. And you actually do those as part of the Advanced Communicator Gold Award. In this section, for the Pathway DTM, you can do it as, again, you do it either a youth leadership, a speechcraft, or a club sponsor. So one of the interesting things to note is in the old program, any one of sponsor, coach, or mentor was sufficient. On the Pathways program, you must do coach or mentor. You may do a club sponsor if you don't want to do a youth leadership or speechcraft, and the long educationals have gone away. So those are the essential differences. They feel a lot alike because they are a lot alike, but as you can see, there are some differences. So that concludes my lead in to the panel discussion. Back to you, Michelle.
Thank you. Thank you so much, George. And thank you for basically introducing yourself. So you saved me there. Thank you. Now, if you would kindly take off the screen share. I think you're— I'm
trying.
Okay.
I've lost it here.
Well, looks like it's technology.
Oh, hang on. George forgot how to work the Zoom. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, just like, there you are. Now, before we go into the panel discussion, before I introduce our panelists, let's entertain maybe 2 or 3 minutes, quick questions, if there's any, on the differences. We know the similarities, the differences between the Pathways DTM and the traditional DTM. If there are any questions, please raise your hand and or just unmute yourself if you have a question. Going, and gone. Okay, looks like, George, you were so clear that there are no questions, which is wonderful. So let us now proceed to the panel discussion. What I will do is I will first introduce our panelists and then ask each panelist to speak for 2 to 3 minutes on, or to speak about their DTM project or projects, because in many cases, there might be more than one DTM project or DTM of our experienced panelist group. And I will introduce our lone Rose, our lone female among our panelists. And this is also her first time to join Tuesday Talks and Tips as a presenter, as a panelist. So quite an interesting introduction, which I think I was thinking of initially editing, but now I'm thinking, no, I want everyone to hear this in its full flavor. So it took the invitation of a friend to just be a friendly face in the audience for Carolyn to visit her first Toastmasters meeting. She had been looking at the newspaper calendar for 6 months, trying to gird up the courage to attend. Now she had a friendly face at the meeting. Carolyn drove into the program to see if it worked as promised, took opportunities available, and earned her Distinguished Toastmaster Award in less than 4 years. Since Pathways rolled out in District 32, Carolyn has earned proficiencies in effective coaching, presentation mastery, and the Pathways Mentor Program. While working to complete DTM requirements, she had began the Engaging Humor Path. She is now the Program Quality Director for District 32. And so you'll be hearing from her shortly. Then another panelist, not a first timer on Tuesday Talks and Tips, is Roger. Roger is another relative newcomer. In fact, he is the newest in this group. He began his Toastmasters journey in 2017. He was a Pathways guide for his local district, that's District 50, when Pathways was launched in February 2018. In November, do the math, February, November, Roger became the first Pathways DTM in District 50 for completing the presentation mastery and strategic relationships. He is currently working on engaging humor and dynamic leadership paths. Graham Cairns, on the other hand, is a distinguished Toastmaster based in Queensland, Australia, where he is a member of 3 current clubs, plus another one in formation, what's known as a prospective club. He is also a member of 3 online-only or undistricted clubs and joined a blended or online-offline club in District 27, the second Pathways pilot district. He has earned a DTM in the traditional program and is now working on his DTM in Pathways. Another first-timer on our Tuesday Talks and Tips is Ed Ramirez from District 75, that's the Philippines. And Ed has been a Toastmaster for just 3 years, having served as in various roles in several clubs. He has competed in speech contests in various categories, and he is serving as area director. He has sponsored 3 clubs already, mentored 1, and has coached 3 others. Thanks to the club coach program, he has earned his DTM under the under the traditional program, and he is now working towards his Pathways DTM. So let us all welcome our 4 or 5 panelists, and my math is going crazy. We have 5 panelists, including George Marshall, who needs no introduction. So at this point, I'm going to invite any of the panelists, and I don't have you guys in any particular order, but I would like to invite any of you to start speaking about either one or all of your DTM projects, but please do it within 2 to 3 minutes. Who's unmuting first? Dun, dun, dun. George, I thought, was going to unmute first, but no, Carolyn has unmuted herself first. Yay! Let's welcome Carolyn.
Well, for my HPL in the traditional program, I think that one had the most impact for me. That project fell into my lap. We had members from Future Farmers of America wanting help to get their new chapter ready to give a speech contest. That meant these kids had to learn how to speak and how to actually put on a contest for them to continue up, similar to what we do with our speech contests. No one had volunteered. As a district leader at the time, I was an area director. How could we do that? I wound up recruiting experienced Toastmasters and sitting down with the advisor as my guidance committee. What did the people need? Going from there, we put on 2 speech craft sessions for the kids, a 4-week and a 6-week program, and then taught them how to run a speech contest, how to chair it, how to be a chief judge for it, how to do all those aspects and publicize it. At the end, we had kids that couldn't even stand up and say their name, giving a 6 to 8 minute speech. I think the most impact I had was when one of the Future Farmers of America officials from their national headquarters mentioned that we were looking at dropping Toastmasters from our list of resources. We're going to keep Toastmasters on this list because what we saw here with this partnership was so valuable for our youth. When you look at the HPLs and you look at leadership, we're looking at the impact we can provide others.
Oh, okay. Sorry. I was so engrossed in listening. I wasn't sure if you were done or not.
I was trying to keep it short.
Yeah, that was short. See, you were only 1 minute and 46. So
okay.
I was like, oh, is she just taking a breath? Thank you so much. Thank you. That gives us more time for other questions or comments later on. So please let me hear from, yeah, I think Graham's unmuted himself. Go ahead, Graham.
My HPL in the traditional program was, well, quite frankly, it was almost a HPL light. If I were to be doing it again, I think I would probably choose something with more heft than what I did. My home club celebrated its 500th meeting about 1.5 years back. And I organized a HPL to commemorate that occasion. I set up a team, and some of the team was expected to track down charter members dating back to when the club first started. Others were involved in organising the festivities, making sure that we had district officers turning up and all that sort of thing. It was a leadership thing. I wasn't doing all the work myself, and that's the important thing about a high-performance leadership project, that it has to be about leadership, not about you doing it yourself. But in much the same way that a lot of area directors use their area conference as a high-performance leadership project, I sort of feel a little guilty that there wasn't as much heft to it, as much weight as I would have liked. And so I'm looking for something more significant for my Pathways DTM.
Thank you. Wow. Looks like everyone is trying to beat themselves and being brief. Roger, would you like to be next?
I will take up the extra time from Graham and Caroline. No problem at all. My DTM project was in Pathway, and I think there is something similar to what we just heard from Graham and Caroline. Is that a couple things that seems to serve us as they were talking. Is one, sometimes we take it for granted in terms of what we do week in and week out in our club, that the things that we can serve our members, serving our community, that we might not even think about, is completely new to some people and some group. Number two, whether your HPL or DTM project is heavy enough or not, I believe it has to really to do with responding to needs. I don't think we need to create needs. There are needs all over the place. They're already there. We're simply recognizing the need, and now we're going to respond to that need. And that seed being sown may look small today, but it may grow into something huge later on. So I think I have a slightly different point of view from Graham, but I'm sure there's nothing material in a sense. My DTM project was part of responding to the needs of a local need. By the time I started to do my DTM project, Pathway was still almost new to everybody, because we launched in February, And I got my DTM in November. I believe I started maybe around the September time. And less than half of the district has launched into pathway. They're still not sure what's going on. So along with my division director, we decided to create a series of training. It started off with pathway, but very quickly it evolved. So each month we have a different kind of online training. One of them was what we call the speech evaluation showcase, where we brought in almost like a contest, but instead of competing, the three panelists, experts that we brought in, each decided that they will evaluate and give an evaluation method different from the other. So we had a test speakers who came up. It was completely online. He gave a speech. All the attendees heard the speech. Then the three evaluator came in and says, okay, here's my 1, 2, 3, or another person might have the glove, or so on and so forth. So they did, each one of them did a very different showcase. So from that, we evolved into a number of other projects. Now this goes right into my next DTM project, or next 2 DTM project that I'm already on the books, is that I am in the process of creating a number of YouTube series that can be evergreen. For example, a project like tonight, these tips, for those who are diehard, they'll dive in, they'll watch it for an hour. For oftentimes, many people who are frequenting on YouTube, they're not going to sit in and watch for an hour. So how do we pull some of the key golden nuggets out, and yet we can create I guess I should be going this direction, learning how to speak online, that we will be creating a series where there might be a series on evaluation and a series on how to handle table topic. And these are potentially evergreen that local clubs can use as a training. Number 2, can be used as promotional. They can download one of these, almost mimicking what the fast track, if any one of you have tried that fast track a series, that they can push out to a prospective member, and then bring them back into their club. So that is an overview of what I did in the DTM I completed and the DTM project that I am about to launch.
Thank you very much, Roger. And you were not kidding when you said you were going to use the time that the others had so generously given you. Thank you. Now, everybody is best, but for the first time from the Philippines, I'd like to hear Ed Ramirez. Ed, speak about your DTM project.
Now, as an area director, we normally have clubs that are problem clubs. One of the clubs that was assigned to me was a corporate club that relocated and downsized. Downsized means they eliminated most of the Toastmaster members. So I inherited a club that could barely renew last October. So I thought this was an opportunity for me to transform this club into from a corporate club to a community club with the online meetings. I found that this club had the potential of getting into something like that. So that's my DTM project. I probably will have to ask distinguished Toastmaster Michelle how to go about it, because right now I have really no clue on how to make this successful. But I'm really determined to make this thing work for the sake of my area.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Ed. And there's a full flavor of different kinds of projects. And as I was listening, I was thinking, wait a minute, I've been moderating these panels, and this time I think I want to join in because I've earned 6 DTMs, 4 in the traditional and 2 in pathways. I won't talk about the projects in the traditional, but I wanted to share my projects for the 2 DTMs in pathways. Somehow, because I'm reminded by the different responses, the range of responses. In my case, my first Pathways DTM, the project was to, as we all know, or I hope most of us know, it's clearly stated that it needs to benefit an organization. It doesn't have to be Toastmasters. So my first Pathways DTM was to benefit an organization that was celebrating its 25th anniversary. So nobody was an active Toastmaster among my team, but some of them had been Toastmasters in the past. And it was not easy because this was, for them, this was not a project. This was reality. This was getting a 25-year-old company to the point of being able to revive itself because the company had been moribund. We had not been doing any programs. We basically were just hibernating. So we revived the company, and it was in effect like a relaunch and a celebration of 25th anniversary. We had to find all the back information going back to 25 years. It was a little bit stressful, but also a really wonderful celebration, not just of the DTM, but of the 25 years. So after that, I felt, well, now my second DTM in Pathways should be for Toastmasters. So guess what? I said I will do 7 webinars or learning sessions spaced every week. And does it sound familiar? That's Tuesday Talks and Tips, 7. Because 7 is my favorite number. Well, it just started going on. And so we are now in 19. I've earned my DTM 7, but this just goes on, and maybe will go on until, who knows, until the sunset for the traditional program. But that's how projects can sometimes get even bigger than you initially envisioned, and how it can benefit more people than you originally envisioned. There you are. And I also kept to my time. 2 minutes and 13 seconds. Okay, so at this point, let me see. We have
I think Roger wanted to respond to something.
Oh yes, Roger, go ahead.
Yes, I would. This is messages for Ed. I'm going to assume you're going to be having a great success converting this club. I would encourage you not only turn this into a DTM project, but maybe another could be a follow-up as the making of this DTM project, because that could very well be a good case study for other people in terms of, hey, what happened when we have a dying club of this type? And here are the things that we went through, and here are the struggles that we've gone through, and this is where we arrived at. Downsizing, upsizing, company moving from one location to another, those things happen all of the time. So I would encourage you, like I said, I assume you're going to make this a great success. It's going to be a good conversion. Now that the DTM, once you have that DTM project completed, document it somehow into a case study that you can share with others in the Toastmasters world.
Great suggestion, Roger. And that, in fact, could be a spin-off, as you mentioned. Somebody else could take that as their DTM project, not necessarily Roger or not necessarily Ed. Somebody in his team could be encouraged, and that could be their DTM project, creating this documentation and testing it out in different scenarios so that it is not just a one-off success. Great job. Now I am looking at the chat, and there seems to be there have been several comments ongoing, but thanks to our panelists, there have also been responses already, I believe. So let me see if, and yes, Carolyn, I see your raised hand. Let me just quickly see. I think all of the questions or points on the chat have been answered. So yes, Carolyn, please go ahead.
When you talked about your project helping others, building that bigger vision, my DTM project right now is very amorphous. Our district does not have committees. We're fairly new joining Alaska and Washington together. We've just been struggling just getting to know one another. My DTM project is to change the mindset of members to be willing to serve on a committee. So that's trying to work that out, but you have that bigger goal of growing. And I've told my members and those that have stepped up to help that my vision right now is not to have full-fledged committees by the end of this year, but that in 5 years, we have many people serving on committees to help them fulfill their goals with Toastmasters.
Wow, that is perhaps, how do you put it? That is probably going to be one of the most challenging, but also one of the most rewarding projects that I've heard in a long time. I mean, there are projects that are so cut and dried, like, okay, do this, do this, do this, done. And then there you have a project to change the mindset. It's almost, I'm reminded of the US military presence overseas to win the minds and hearts. It's almost like that. You know?
In some cases it is, because
Yes.
I look at our statistics, we have 40 clubs out of 97 that have not submitted any educational achievements at all this year.
Wow. Carolyn, you know what? I want offline after this. I would like to have a conversation with you because although I'm past district director, I have gone back and I am serving as division director now. And my division sounds so much like what you've described. We have clubs that are just barely hanging on, and none of the clubs actually are at 20. None of the clubs in the division. And like you said, there are clubs that have not submitted any education awards at all. And there are even clubs that have not submitted officer lists. And there are clubs who have not even renewed any members. So it's a serious challenge. We are having conversations with my area directors, but you know, that's the push and pull of, do I want to do another DTM with just 1, 2, 3, bam, or something like yours? And I'm starting to think my 7th DTM, maybe I want something like that, something that's going to be very hard work, but will be so rewarding.
It's to piggyback one more time, it's the same thing that I said to Ed, is that this could apply not only in district that's similar to you, but any kind of district that's struggling, that's on the one hand, any growing district, right, which just been added, for example, to going from provisional to completely a new district. How do we go about from, hey, I'm just want to take care of my club or my 20, 25 people, how do I get out of that mindset? So therefore, I strongly encourage whatever documentation that you can wrap around as a case study, that could be transferable to other clubs and other districts too. So heads off to you, Caroline.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you. And I love how this conversation is going and just, you know, dovetailing and picking up one from the other. And thank you, George, for posting the full project PDF for the Distinguished Toastmaster in Pathways. Thank you so much. It's on the chat for those of you who might want to download it.
On that subject, if I may, because anybody who's looking at this later will not have access to the chat, perhaps we should say the question that was asked was, how do you actually go about doing the DTM? There's a HPL manual in the traditional program. There isn't something similar in the Pathways. And so the question was, how do we find information about the DTM project? The answer is that once you have completed one entire path and are at level 3 of a second, you have to approach World Headquarters and ask for the HPL details to be sent to you. It doesn't happen automatically. That came as a surprise to me. I've completed 2 paths and I'm halfway through another couple. And I was wondering, I wonder whatever happened to my DTM stuff. You actually have to ask for it. And so that was the question that was asked. And for anybody who doesn't get a chance to read the chat, I thought that I should outline that so that they know.
Thank you very much, Graham. Thank you. And this seems like it comes from the experience on radio. Graham, by the way, has been on radio for years. And so in radio, you don't see. So he actually has translated it into audio. Just one word, Graham, though. You said HPL project. It is DTM project.
Sorry, yes,
In
the DTM
Pathways,
project, yes.
DTM
yes,
project.
Yes,
And but I
you
know
get the
it's
DTM
so
project,
easy,
yes.
so easy to get interchanged. Yes, George.
Just to tag on to what Graham said, a change in the program in the last few weeks makes all projects available to all members. People can work things in any order. Now, headquarters has not caught up on providing the DTM early, but the reason I posted it into the chat is because we are now allowed to work on any project, and seems to me like that included the DTM. And back to the HPL manual or not, of course, both the HPL and the DTM project are simply projects within Pathways. You no longer have to pay for them. They are available at the appropriate time and the appropriate channel. Folks, I've got to check out. Is there any last questions? I'll be glad to answer them, but I've got a family that is insisting on my attention.
Yes, and in fact, he has already gone beyond. He had said he was going to leave in the first 20 to 30 minutes. He's gone beyond that. So any final questions for our District 57 Pathways Guru? Okay, there's a thank you to you, George. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you. These are very wonderful, and I'll see you in some future time. Bye, all.
Thank you very much. And so for the rest, especially those who came in with a question, if you have that question, you want to ask it, now is the time to unmute yourself and ask your question. I understand some are only on audio, and that's fine, but hopefully you all know how to unmute yourselves. If not, bring your cursor or your pointer or your thumb, whatever device you're using, down to the lower left corner of your screen, and you will see it will either be a microphone icon or the word mute or unmute. You can click on that and then you will be unmuted. So if you have a question, please go ahead and do that. If you know how to raise your hand on the chat or on the side of your, let me see now, I've never raised my hand actually. So how, there, Graham, can you explain how to raise your hand?
Yes, down at the bottom of the screen, there will be something that says participants. If you click on that, it'll list all of the names, and one of the options that comes up is raise hand, like I've just done. And then I can turn my hand back down again, which I've just done.
Thank you. I guess I just revealed that I am not a hand raiser. I just unmute and jump.
Most of us just interrupt. Most of us just interrupt.
Actually, a disruptor.
On that
Yes.
subject, if I may interrupt, Michelle, and again, getting back to the things that are in the chat, which those that are viewing this later won't get a chance to do. Ari asked a question up front that's actually an interesting one. What happened to the old special programs from the legacy program, by which I understand he means things like the success communications or success leadership modules, which you used to have to do to get a DTM under the legacy program. They're not required, and in fact they don't appear in the Pathways DTM project or in the Pathways DTM process. That doesn't mean that you can't still offer them. If you feel that you could benefit from offering the better thinking or any of those success leadership or success communications modules, then feel free to do them. It's just that you don't get credit for them towards your DTM anymore.
Yes, that's a point if you just equate one-to-one. However, if you were working, for example, like what Ed was saying, or Carolyn, or who else was saying, that enlarging or improving your area or division, your district, then you can use those presentations instead of reinventing the wheel and creating all your own programs. So they still serve a purpose. They just are not for credit within pathways. But then again, if you look at pathways, it's actually so much faster to go from level 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in one path than it was to go from the CC, from the ACB, ACS, and ACG. But okay, that might be debatable for some, so it's just my opinion. It's not gospel truth there. And I see Trish smiling. Trish, do you have anything, and you usually have such a plethora of information, do you have anything you want to add on to this conversation about the earning the DTM in pathways?
I'm working on mine. I have not yet earned my DTM in pathways. Remember, we were one of the last districts to deploy, and I've been a bit busy with the pathways chair stuff. So I have been, my original intent was to use my service as the pathways chair, building the support team and the support desk as part of my DTM project, and that may still be that may still be the case. As we were talking earlier, things evolve and things change a little bit, and so I'm redefining what the end objectives are going to be. I assumed that this would end on June 30th, of 2020. And now I'm not so sure it's going to end on June 30th, 2020. So I'm trying to figure out where a good definition for the end of the DTM project would be now. So anyway, I wanted to hear what everybody else had done and be fed today instead of being the server. So I appreciate everybody sharing the various projects that you've all worked on to get your DTMs. And I'm jealous. I have 5 legacy DTMs. I got to hurry up and catch up with you guys.
Yeah. Thank you, Trish. And yeah, it's nice to be on the other side sometimes, right? Being the nourished rather than the nurturer. Yes, Graham.
I was going to say, on the path that Trish has just spoken about, and which you just spoke about, can I be that guy today and ask, what's everybody else doing for your DTM projects? Because I'm looking for ideas as well. I've got a couple of things that I'm working on, but I'd like to hear what everybody else is doing. We've heard from Ed what he's looking at, and from Carolyn. Can I ask what everybody else is working on for their Pathways DTMs, so that I can take some ideas, and so that those who are watching this on replay can also go, ooh, there's something I hadn't thought of doing.
Yes, Graham, thank you for that. Let me answer first, or let me read a question that was sent to me privately and then answer it, because others may have a similar question. So the question was, how do you go from one DTM to another? Do you only do one DTM project each time, or do you do 2 paths and then a DTM project? And the response to that is really, it depends on your style. There are some people who are really linear, so they will start planning everything from 1, 2, 3, 4, and move it in a linear fashion. And then there are the crazy people like me who will kind of do it in a mind mappy way, where you can be doing 2 DTM projects, 3 or 4 paths. Yes, Roger, perfect. 3 or 4 paths. At one time I was doing 5 paths simultaneously. Now I'm only doing 3, so it all depends. There is no rule. The only thing is that for you to earn your DTM, you need to have 2 paths completed. You need to have your completed DTM project, and you need all the requirements which George had kindly showed at the start. And that will, if you were not here at the start of the session, you can watch it backward. I mean, not watch it backwards. You can watch the recording later. So let's now answer Graham's question. Although I believe, Graham, that everyone has done that, but maybe others.
I'll be honest. I'm just looking for ideas. I mean, one of the ones that I'm looking at doing is creating, or getting created, a how-to manual for hybrid clubs, for those clubs which wish to have physical members and online members at the same time. And I'm looking at, because I know that a number of people have worked on this, but I'm looking at creating a how-to manual for a club or for people like Ed to say, okay, Ed, this is the best practice that we have discovered. So that's one of the things that I'm looking at for a DTM project, but I'm wondering what other people have got as ideas, because I'm looking for more than one.
Yeah, as a follow-up to what Graham is asking, whether you have already decided on a DTM project or just an idea, I think that would be helpful not only to Graham, but anybody who's listening in. So especially for those who have not spoken yet, in terms of Mary, Dennis, Ari, Kyle, Jay, please unmute yourself and jump in and say, hey, I'm thinking about, or I'm already launching into this idea for my DTM project.
Okay, I'll go ahead. Dennis, I'm listening to this group. I'm pretty much a slacker. I've only got one DTM, and so I'm way behind all of you. But to answer your question, Graham, I am working on a hybrid club right now. One of my members moved out of state, and she still wants to be part of the club. So I have created a hybrid meeting using Zoom. We're fortunate enough to have a computer and a large screen TV at the front of a narrow room, and so I use that for showing everybody the whole view of the meeting. And then what I've done for a secondary camera is I use my iPad, and in order to keep from having an echo, I disable the audio from the computer and large screen TV, and I only use the audio off of my iPad. But the iPad microphone is not good enough, so I've got a Bluetooth remote microphone that I use. So whoever is speaking, I give the microphone to the person who is speaking. The room I have is kind of long and narrow, and so what I've just recently done, I haven't used yet, but I plan to use at the next meeting, is I've got a remote controlled pivoting head that I can use to turn the camera toward the speaker, so the people who are away from who are not physically in the room can see who's talking. So that's kind of what I've been working on. The other thing I've been doing, though, I'm just trying to keep my 3 clubs alive, and also are ready to work on starting a new club. So that's kind of what I'm doing, but I haven't really focused on another DTM yet. But I hope that answers some of your questions about the hybrid club.
Yeah, well, thank you very much, Dennis. That sounds like a lot on your plate. So whenever you find a little bit of space to start working formally on your next DTM, I'm sure it will be great. I think Mary had also unmuted herself. So Mary, did you want to share what your plans are?
I don't plan to get DTM in pathways. I got in the traditional one. That was enough for me. The thing is, I did a church rummage sale, so I think it could be something that a fundraiser that could benefit a certain group. That would be a possibility that I could see.
Yes,
I quite like that idea.
Yeah, being able to do something that is not just a DTM project to qualify for DTM, but really something that will benefit an organization. That is a great feeling. So kudos to you for that. And if ever you will need a member of well, DTM does not, this is one clarification, I think, I don't know if George mentioned this, in the DTM, in the Pathways DTM, you don't actually need a guidance committee. However, it is good to have a committee, whether you call it a guidance committee, sounding board committee, a help committee, a support committee, but it is good to have a team to help you rather than to try and do it all alone. So if ever you need some help later on when you want to work on it, feel free to message us or anyone here in this group. Roger is always going to be willing to help. And of course myself. And okay.
As a follow-up to what Mary just mentioned about churches, in terms of raising funds for church or nonprofit, another potential is doing a speechcraft tailored to groups like that, where how many church can have a few more better composed speakers for their Bible studies and Sunday school teachers and things like that. So that could be one. Caroline talked about the young folks, youngsters, and that could well can be received very well in terms of vacation Bible schools and things like that, where you turn that into a blend between the Bible or the whatever religion it is with speaking quality. So that's a couple of ideas spinning off of what Mary just mentioned.
Right. That's great, Roger. And then Graham, you have a quick point?
I was just going to say, again, following on from something Roger said just then, and which Mary mentioned, one of the things that's different between the traditional DTM and the Pathways DTM is that there is a limit on some of the roles. It used to be that you could run things like the success communication module. You can't do that anymore. You have to sponsor a club or speechcraft or youth leadership. And it's one of those three that you must do. So it's important, I think, that we acknowledge to ourselves that we do need to either sponsor a new club or run a youth leadership or run a speechcraft to get the DTM. You didn't have to do that under the traditional DTM. You had to sponsor a club, yes, but you didn't have to do speechcraft or youth leadership. You could do a success communication module. You can't do that anymore. It has to be one of the big two.
Just a point for correction or clarification, Graham. You still needed those either speechcraft, youth leadership to
or
get
a success communication. If you
no,
did,
success communication was for the earlier. That was not that was one.
I can tell you, I got my DTM without doing a speechcraft or youth leadership because I did the Build Your Thinking Power, which is one of the significant modules. Yeah.
I wish that somebody can do a quick fact check, but I was just looking at at George's slides. I think that is one award backwards. I think that's the ACG, but the ALS still requires. See, remember in DTM, in the traditional program, there's the leadership and there's the communication. You were like interchanging the communication and the leadership track. The communication track needs the success leadership, but the ALS still needs either a speechcraft, a youth leadership. Yes, Carolyn.
Can I share? Because part of when I dove into learning about the program was understanding what I had to do. Mm-hmm. I was given the manuals. I went to my club mentor and said, okay, explain the program to me. Well, you go through the communication track, you complete that, and you get your DTM. What do I do with this competent leader manual? Oh, we don't do that. I paid money for it. What do I do with it? For the advanced communication silver, advanced communication silver, you complete speeches from the Better Speaker series, the Success Leadership series. For the Advanced Leader Bronze, it's the Club Success or the Leadership Excellence series. And then for the Advanced Communicator Gold, there is the Success Communication, and it's a separate aspect for leadership. And there's a whole bunch of aspects in there for speaker to trainer.
Carolyn and Graham. Carolyn and Graham, let me just bring in Trish here. I'm hoping Trish is pulling up her. Thank you. I love you, Trish. Because I think listeners, if this were a jury, if you're the judge would say the jury is advised to disregard the last 4 minutes of testimony because I know we're talking fast, so Graham threw in the success communication into the leadership side, and no, that's not it. And Carolyn tried to clarify, but at one point, as you listen to the recording, she was throwing in the leader and the communication into the same track. So that could be confusing. Trish, are you ready to?
I am.
Yes, please. Thank you.
Okay, for the advanced, now this is legacy program. So for the Advanced Communicator Silver, in addition to the 2 advanced communication manuals, you need to do 2 presentations from the Better Speaker series, or the Successful Club series. Okay. For the Advanced Communicator Gold, then you needed to complete 3 tasks: 2 manuals in the Advanced Communication series, conduct a seminar from the Success Leadership series, the Success Communication series, or the Youth Leadership Program, and 3, coach a new member with his or her first 3 speeches.
Thank you.
So youth leadership you didn't need to do because you could do success leadership or success communication.
Yes.
Speechcraft was not a requirement, though, I don't believe, on the
I'm checking the leadership. Hold on. My pages are stuck together.
Yes. So in the meantime, very quickly, because I cannot believe it, we only have 3 more minutes. Where did the time go? I mean, this topic is apparently more, it has more ramifications and nuances than I initially thought, because what was happening is we were going in a little bit backwards into the traditional program, and then we were jumping, of course, looking forward to the Pathways DTM, but we were also going into club coaching and changing minds and hearts and all this great stuff. So
if I can,
yes,
if I can have 30 seconds to simplify things, the main point is that you must do youth leadership or speechcraft to gain your DTM under the new program. That's whether that was required or not under the traditional program is what we're discussing now, but it doesn't affect the fact that you must do one of those 2 or sponsor a new club.
Or, see, there's an or. So you don't have to. It's the 3. It's sponsor, do a speechcraft, or do a youth leadership program. So
one of those 3 must be
done. One of those 3 is required in Pathways,
Yes. Okay, wonderful. Now, Roger, I see your hand, but we now have just 2 minutes to the bottom of the hour. Ori, I know you unmuted yourself a while ago. Do you have a question? Because I'm sorry, I muted you back because of the background noise. But go ahead, please, with your question if you have one.
Yes, I thank you. That's also why I put some questions in the chat, as I knew I had the background noise. So I hope you hear me well. Thank you very much for all the information. That is excellent. I've learned a lot. What I particularly liked was the conversation around virtual or hybrid clubs. I belong to a corporate club that has the virtual attendance as well. So if you have any project in the future or you're working on anything, I'm looking forward to learning more about that. One little question, it's just a clarification on my original question that was the Success Leadership series. I'm working on that one because it's my last thing for my ACG in the traditional program. And then I have my DTM, I validated all the rest and I got stuck with this. So yes, I just learned at the end that I still had to do this one. So yeah. In the pathways, I know we can still access all those best club successful series, but for example, the Success Leadership series content, the one that we use for ACG, are content that we have to pay for to access. So I understand the value for our clubs to continue delivering it. However, I'm afraid that it's going to disappear completely because people won't necessarily pay for accessing the content to deliver it in Pathways. Do you know if there's any provision or anything in the future that Toastmasters International releases the content for free, or maybe incorporated in the DTM project or Pathways validation in any way?
Okay, that is a very, very great question. And I am obliged to say this to protect Toastmasters copyright. That would not be available just for free officially. However, if you ask around, somebody may have worked on the projects before, may have their old manuals, may be willing to let you have a look at it. But officially, that is not supposed to be, posted publicly. And not to say that there are not some generous districts that actually have it posted. So if you are just resourceful and know how to Google, you might actually come across those materials. It is now incredibly, my friends, the bottom of the hour. And so much as I know we still have a lot to discuss, I will be wrapping up this session now, and perhaps very quickly, just 30 seconds or less, each of our panelists, could you give a very short message about doing your DTM, something to encourage or to inspire, to inform our listeners? Yes,
I'll
Roger.
start. Always look for something, a need that's already around, and find a way to serve that need. And one idea to throw out there for anybody who's still thinking about creating a DTM, something to do with marketing. That is an area that majority of the clubs are weak in. Most of them wait until they are struggling. Now we need to market. No, it's something that you need to continue to do throughout the
Great
year.
point.
That's an
Great
idea.
point. So think about marketing when you think of your DTM. Great tagline. Next short message from our other panelists. Yes, Graham.
Do it now. Do it now. Just do it now. It took me 20, 30, 40 years, in fact, to get my first DTM because there was a project that I just didn't get around to doing. When I rejoined, I redid that project. It was actually much easier than I thought. Do it now. If you want a DTM, it's simply a matter of doing it.
That's a great point. And I know you also said that last week. So you really are a believer in just do it. Yes, Carolyn, would you like to? Yes.
For me, look at where you can grow. What impact do you have? Our district has our vision as bringing people together to share their individual message with the world. With Toastmasters, we want to encourage people to be better, to grow. How can you empower somebody else to grow and look for those opportunities?
Wow, I love that message. Look for opportunities to help people to grow. And yes, Ed, please unmute yourself. There.
Well, I think don't overthink it.
Mm-hmm.
Just that is powerful enough. Just don't overthink it. Just do it. Think of something that will benefit others, that will help you grow. Isn't that an amazing one-liner combining our panelists' messages of inspiration? So thank you so much, everyone. Please unmute yourselves and give our panelists a really big round of applause. Thank you so much. I will now stop the recording, but I will be around for a while, and maybe some of our panelists would like to hang around for a while as well. Okay.